Blair back with you on a cold, probably typical Colorado morning in January. Welcome to Back to the Past. I am going to spend today doing a little bit of wood milling. My Woodmizer LX25 I've used mostly for pine so far. I've tried a little bit on some hardwood, and I'm actually pretty happy with it. There are a couple of exceptions, and I'll actually go ahead and talk about those first. There are a couple things that are real peeves to me. I've been self-employed for 35 years, and one thing that I always ask myself is a little additional quality, the cost of that additional quality, worth it in your reputation? And my answer is almost always yes. And there are a couple things on this Woodmizer LX25 that I think are really cheap and cheesy that Woodmizer could have spent an extra $20 on and really made a dynamite little wood mill out of this. I've heard a few complaints that the engine isn't big enough, and I ordered mine with the 9.5 horse engine. That probably should have been the minimum size that would have come with this mill, but really I haven't had any complaints with that. With the 12 to 15 inch diameter pine that I've been cutting, it's been no problem at all. I'm sitting on a hackberry tree, and I made a first cut on the bottom of that just to flatten this to give it some stability as I continue cutting it. And that labored the engine a little bit. It's probably a 16 inch wide cut, but again, not complaining about the engine. Here's my complaint. My complaint is with this lubrication system. A 1 gallon lubrication tank. Could Woodmizer have found anything cheaper or smaller than that? I don't think so. That should have been a minimum of a 2 gallon tank. One thing that really kind of hacks me off is constantly refilling that lubricant tank. 1 gallon is not anywhere near sufficient, and as I back off, there's plenty of room. They could have probably fit a 5 gallon tank on there, but it should be at least 2 or 3 gallons. My next gripe, again with the lubrication system, is this cheap, cheesy little valve on here. On a chilly day, working with plastic, things don't work all that well. This is really almost a two-handed operation to be able to operate this. It's not frozen. I'm using a winterized antifreeze or windshield washer fluid along with dish soap as a lubricant in the tank. This operates pretty hard. Having the flexibility here makes this a two-handed operation to be able to do. That, again, they could have come out of the tank, a better tank, with something solid, maybe some solid brass piping, a solid brass ball valve here, and then go with flexible tubing the rest of the way. Again, I think $20 would have made this a whole lot better setup. Woodmizer, I don't know if you're listening. If you are, change that. Now let's talk a little bit about wood. Well, as I said, I have been cutting mostly softwoods with this, and I'm really impressed with the accuracy of the cuts on a $3,000 sawmill. Just to check it out, I wanted to try cutting a fairly thin piece, and this piece is cut at less than 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's pretty consistent the entire length of it. It's a great cutting mill if you have a straight-grained, soft, easy-to-cut wood. In a little while, I'll fire up the mill. I just changed the blade. I got a brand new blade on it. I'm going to work on this Hackberry a little bit. As you can see, it's pretty irregular shape. I just cut this one down in Arkansas on my last trip. I cut it down in 3 sections. The first cut I actually made about 15 feet off the ground. because I was concerned about how far the entire tree would fall, because it was getting pretty close to a state highway. So I cut down the top half of it. So when we get to this section here, it is cracked. It broke when it hit the ground. But for the most part, it held up pretty well. This section here is about 7 feet long, and it would have gone from 15 to 22 feet. The piece beside me here went from 22 to 30 feet. It's 8 feet long. The piece that I still have in Arkansas to bring back, and it's got some beautiful crotchwood in it, I suspect. It's about 15 feet in length, and I may have to cut it down a little bit just to get it back to Colorado. But that one I'm really looking forward to. It's a larger diameter, and that'll be a real test, I think, for this mill. The one thing that I am seeing about the hackberry tree is that it grows extremely fast. Some of the growth rings are as wide as an inch apart on them. So my question for woodworkers, I too am a woodworker, but I have never worked with hackberry before. So anyone that has had some experience with hackberry, I suspect it's not a terribly strong wood since the growth rings are as far apart as they are. They're pretty straight, so I'm guessing that it's an easy milling lumber. But I'd really love to see some comments from woodworkers. What is hackberry wood like to work with? Have you used it for furniture? How is it? Have the pieces you've seen been beautiful? I'm kind of expecting that. Now, because this is so irregular, because the center is pretty much hollowed out on this, I'm going to start out by trying to get some 4/4 pieces off the top, and then as I get down close to the vertical grain, I'm going to take out some 8/4 pieces, and if they dry well, I may try using them for door styles or something like that. So give me a few moments, and we'll get this saw fired up. Let's fire this up, and I'll check my blade tension and make some adjustments if needed. I'm going to snug it up just a little more. Just right. Here we go. Let's have a look. Let me give you a better look at this, and then we'll cut a couple more. Let's take a look. So far, pretty straight grain cuts, very light colored wood. I like it. Again, you can see how far the grain is, or how coarse the grain is on this because of the fast growth rate of this wood. Let's cut a couple more. Let's try a couple of 8/4 cuts now as we're approaching this vertical grain. I really like the grain in this. Stand by and I'll show you. Beautiful contrast between the light and dark wood. And then some of the pieces of 8/4. Not very wide, but still usable. Goodbye, choo-choo train. And then I have one last request. Stand by. Here we come to the part where I desperately need your help, or the help from someone who knows something about lumber, eastern hardwoods, and that sort of thing. When I bought this property in Arkansas, there was a dead fallen tree that had fallen and just barely missed the cabin. It was about 3 feet in diameter at 3 feet off the ground. At the base, it was probably around 4 feet in diameter. The lower 2 feet had rotted completely. Unfortunately, the tree landed to where the end, probably 15 feet, wasn't even touching the ground because of a crotch or a branch that had laid on one end and then the root on the other end. I tried milling a branch off of that. The branch was about 9 inches in width, had a brand new blade on. It's an extremely hard and heavy wood. And take a look at the nasty cut that I got from that. I tried taking it fairly slow. It's an extremely hard wood. The branch, understandably, is pretty gnarly, and I can understand some amount of blade drift, but the blade went crazy on this. And I cut 4 or 5 pieces. The branch was about 9 inches in diameter. I really don't know what this wood is. I have heard several people guess. One guess was hickory, one was white oak, which initially that is what I thought it was. One was Osage orange. The weight of this, I did dry some of it to an 11% moisture content, and the dry weight of this is 48 pounds per cubic foot. It's extremely heavy wood. It's probably heavier than oak. It's heavier than any of the maples I've ever worked with. I understand Osage orange is very heavy, and it's a pretty gnarly wood, but 3 feet in diameter would be an extremely large Osage orange tree. The height of the tree was probably originally, before it came down, 50 to 60 feet in height would be my guess. I have got a few slides that I'll show here, and please, if you know anyone that knows their woods, I would love to know what this stuff is, because I've got a couple of big cants that I intend to try to mill. 2 of them about 12 inches by 18 inches and 9 feet in length, that I cut out with a chainsaw mill, and that had its work cut out for it. I ended up hitting, I think, a total of 11 nails, so there were some nails in it. I got most of those pulled. There's still one that I'm aware of that I need to get rid of before I put it on the mill, but I'm really curious and would love your help. Comment below, please. I'll close out this episode here saying thank you so much for being with me, for the patience of watching me. Wood milling really is a lot of fun, and a lot of you that are watching are millers, and you can appreciate exactly what I'm saying. This LX25 I think is a pretty darn good mill. It has some minor details that I think could have done better. One thing I failed to mention that I really dislike is that this adjustable blade guide really isn't long enough to help you with anything less than 15 inches in diameter. So that explains part of the drift that I got on this 9-inch diameter log too, is that I really didn't have a lot of control. If this blade guide came out to about here, maybe some of the smaller logs could be handled. Hope you liked the episode. If you did, please give me the thumbs up down below here. A thumbs down is okay if you think it's not good. Subscribe if you haven't, and please share with a friend. I would really like more people to to know what a lot of fun that this sort of thing is. I am always dedicated to historic restoration, which is the main reason I got this mill. And we will continue the journey when I get back to Arkansas. Until then, have a great week.